Hey guys, I'm back again, and today I'm really excited to bring you something special. One of the coolest dinosaurs ever from one of the most exciting companies today. Now, there are iconic dinosaurs that even the most uninterested will recognize. But if you ask any layman to draw a dinosaur, chances are they'd draw a sauropod. Gigantic, long neck, long tail, pillar-like legs. It's one of the most distinctive bow plans. But as a kid, I found them a little boring because they all look the same, with nothing of the bizarre I find so interesting. I've since learned that's not true. There were sauropods with unusual anatomies, such as Amargsaurus with that vacuum cleaner mouth. There were sauropods with weapons like the ankylosaur club on Spinosaurus or the stegosaur-type tagomizer on Spinophorosaurus. There were sauropods with armor in titanosaurs such as Saltosaurus, and there were sauropods with flamboyant displays such as in today's dinosaur. So let me present you with the PNSO Amargasaurus. Amargsaurus is part of Dicraeosauridae, a sauropod family characterized by smaller bodies, relatively short necks, and long neural spines, and Amargsaurus sure exemplifies those traits. Now, I first learned of Amargsaurus, interestingly, from the Dinotopia series. Now, there's this image by James Gurney, and it just really amazed me because up to this point, I thought that sauropods all looked the same. And that actually started my interest in sauropods, and indeed, so much so that this is now my favorite dinosaur book. So, this figure measures about 40 centimeters, which means at an estimated 10 meters, we're looking at more a 1 in 25 scale than the 1 in 35 scale that PNSO claims. But that just allows for more detail, so I'm not going to complain. Now, with all models, there's always one thing that just leaps out at me. And for Amargsaurus, it's of course the elongated spines of the animal. Now, Amargsaurus is one of those happy instances where you have a decent amount of fossil material discovered. And however, no skin impressions were found, so it's always been interesting to see a few different artistic ideas on what to do with the spines. Now, some interpretations have the spines completely encased by skin, some completely devoid of it, and yet others somewhere in the middle, which is what PNSO did. Now, personally, while I think the fully encased idea is nice, it doesn't sound very practical, simply because a membranous structure spanning the spines would severely limit movement in one part of the spine that requires the biggest range of motion. So what about Spinosaurus and Dimetrodon or Uranosaurus and the like? Well, notice that the elongations are mainly in the thoracic region, which is an area that tends to be relatively immobile anyway. So having a sail there would have less effect on range of motion. Now, being targeted at children as well as adults, these spines are soft. But I'd still be very careful because I think they could break off quite easily, and that really spoiled my weekend. Now, the one thing I'm unsure of is how far apart these spines are. Look at them from top here. They're quite far apart. The reason for the double row is the bifurcation actually of a single spinous process. Now, if you have a look here at C6 and C8 from the Salgado and Bonaparte paper, and that's believable on my Carnegie Amargsaurus, because these aren't spread too far apart. On the other hand, what I see here, given the long separation distance between the two, seems to be more like two separate rows of spines and not so much a bifid structure. So I think these might be a little too far apart spaced. Now, there are 11 pairs of bifid neck spines. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And so the numbers are correct here, again based on the Salgado and Bonaparte paper. And there are then 9 dorsal spines. So we count them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And these are bifid. So the number's correct, but according to the paper, the last 2 dorsal spines actually shouldn't be bifid. So if I read that paper wrong, somebody please tell me. And then thereafter, there are just single unbifurcated spines running down the rest of the animal. So what were these spines for? Well, it might have been for courtship show to females, mating challenge to other males, thermal regulation if there was in fact a sale, and Salgado and Bonaparte even suggest defense. Now, interestingly enough, another dicrasaurid, Amargsaurus, which was just described last year in 2019, also had elongated spines but projecting forward. And since Amargsaurus came 15 million years later, it's possible it was a later adaptation of the defense first spotted in Amargsaurus. Now, I've spent a lot of time talking about the spines because they are the most eye-catching feature. But this model is highly detailed all over. Now, elsewhere you'll see skin folds. Here. And you'll see scales of an appropriate size which vary regionally. And I'm not sure about this, but it looks like these look like hints of vertebrae on the neck. Here. Now you've also got osteoderms here and there. Which you'd see only if you were looking hard. And in the head you'll see scalation and other kinds of detail which are barely discernible unless you're up close and personal. Now, this is realistic, as you'd expect the size to be small in this area. And even on the inside of the sails, for want of a better word, they've added scales in an area you'd normally never see, even on display. But PNSO wasn't thinking about slacking, and I like that kind of integrity. Now, unfortunately, even though the skeleton was considered complete, the skull itself wasn't. Only the rear half was recovered. So they've modeled Amargsaurus with a diplodocene skull, which is long, narrow, rather horse-like, and they've gone for a lipless look. Now, the beady little eyes themselves are very well painted. And from the front, you'll see just the tiniest lopsidedness that isn't at all noticeable. Now, the color. And you better believe in a flamboyant animal like this, color is important, and thankfully we're not let down here. For an idea of how important color is, look at this wild safari Amargsaurus I passed on because I thought it looked like crap. And then this custom by Martin Garrett. Huge difference, yeah? Now, the general scheme of the body has a counter-shaded olive green on the dorsal half of the animal, and then contrasting with a lighter grey-green color as we move ventrally. You can see how the pattern transitions towards a striped look down here, all the way to the tail, giving it a very nice banded effect. And the eyes are also highlighted by a nice ring of beige. And you'll see an intermediate light brown here, which then predominates all the way down the sides of the animal. It's a very nice figure, very beautifully painted. Now if we look at just the body of the animal, it's already very beautifully painted. The colors and patterns are interesting. yet not in a ridiculously flamboyant way you'd sometimes see when artists they run amok. But then you get to the sail. Now here the colors just scream display and just pop out. You'd expect this, of course. It was indeed a display structure of some sort. Now the base starts in a pale orange that blends into a louder orange midway up, and then finally to a black-brown color. Now in the promo pictures, which just blew me away but sadly not captured in the actual production model, is a purplish hue, which is lacking in this one. But still, without that, I think you can see that there's a bright, almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Iridescent, shimmery effect. And the exposed spines themselves are dark brown. So this is just beautiful. You can see as I tilt the model, the way the light just catches on the sail makes it look like it's really shimmering. Now, this is really the kind of thought I'd expect in a higher end model and makes this truly a delight. It almost belies the fact that we're looking at a PVC model and not an expensive resin kit. Now, both legs are positioned in a mid-stride attitude. I just love the posture of these things. Any angle you choose to view them, they look amazing. The legs are rather slender, which is consistent with what we know. Now, sauropods did have rather slender limbs, sometimes unexpectedly so, which makes sense in a kind of energy conservation kind of way, I guess. And now I like the proportions and the pose, but speaking of the legs, that brings me to the only dissatisfaction I have about this model. Can you guess what it is? These toenails. Now, one of the most fascinating and anatomical features of sauropods for me were the feet. When it comes to the forefeet, it was one thumb claw and a semicircular arch that that lacks distinctive digitation, let alone toenails. Now, the strangest thing is if you look at the promo pics, even in the in the booklet that was included full of pictures, they did not in fact paint toenails. Now in Chinese we have a saying 画蛇添足, drawing a snake and then adding feet, referring to ruining an effect by adding something completely superfluous, and yet this is something they seem to have done. This is really disturbing, and I'm actually going to have to fix it by having somebody paint them out. Now this model comes with a base. I like bases when they're well executed because then it gives you a diorama, and context is always cool to have because it reminds you that these were living, breathing creatures, a part of the ecosystem and not just abstract monsters per se. And really this is done in a way that the model isn't married to it. As you can see, it stands very nicely without the base. So we've got branches, we've got rocks, mud cracks, we've got the footprints here. Now there have been other Amargsaurus releases in the past, but the only one I got was this old Carnegie. Besides being in the 1/40th scale, which I love, I thought the others were frankly unworthy. And I like the interpretation of the spines. You can see the half-jacketed look here, then transitioning towards a full sail at the back. And this, in fact, seems to be what PNSO chose to do as well. And because of this same choice that they made, I think that both of them will go very well together. Perhaps in a kind of father and son diorama. Now, PNSO isn't a new company. They're a Chinese company known for producing beautifully detailed, painted and scientifically accurate models. But there were internal disputes which led to a period of silence and much fear that they were done for. Well, this Amargsaurus is one in a new wave of offerings from them, and if this and the next dinosaur in the same wave I'm going to review are any indication, reports of their demise were greatly exaggerated. Now, if you want to know when I publish that review, hit the subscribe and notifications button, and I'll see you guys very soon.